Hi, I'm William Stewart, co-founder of Teleos. Welcome back to our verse-by-verse study on the book of Acts. We start chapter 8 today, and it's a momentous chapter because it's where the church, as recorded in this historical narrative of the book of Acts, begins to expand, pushed to do so by the persecution and murder of Stephen, the deacon, and now other believers as well, thus fulfilling the prophecy in Acts 1:8 that the Christians, the believers in Christ, will be, and this is spoken by Christ, will be his witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaritan, and to the ends of the earth. And the process begins now. So let's go to the text. 8:1, and Saul. So Saul is the future Apostle Paul. He's a Pharisee, well taught from Tarsus originally, and he led the stoning of Stephen in the prior chapter. So he was consenting to his death, and at the time there was a great persecution against the church, which was at Jerusalem. And they were all scattered about throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles. So what's happening here? Well, the force of the persecution broke up the early communal church, and they scattered, much like the prophecy of Christ. The word scatter here is diaspero, sort of seed through or throughout, where we get the word diaspora of the Jews. And they, of course, there were a diaspora of the Jews before this of traditional Jews that were already throughout the Roman Empire, but same root of the word. How does Jerusalem differ from Judea? Judea was one of the original 12 tribes of Israel in which Jerusalem resides. So Judea was surrounding Jerusalem and still maintained a separate identity even in the Roman Empire. And then Samaria originally were the 10 tribes, the northern tribes of Israel, besides Judea and Benjamin. And in 722, God gave them over to the Assyrians, who took them over, and the Bible relates this because of their sin and unbelief. As according to Assyrian tradition, they took many of the Jews and transported them elsewhere into the empire, and then brought many into Samaria, or the northern 10 tribes, to seed it with Assyrians. So they interbreeded, and so Samaritans were known as half-breeds by the Jews, and they weren't pure Jews. They hated them. So, and of course, I think the hate was reciprocal. The Samaritans didn't like the Jews. So the Jews are very arrogant towards the Samaritans. But God's including them in the church as well as the Gentiles. And devout men carried Stephen to his burial and made great lamentation over him. And for Saul, he made havoc of the church, entering every house, and hauling men and women committed to prison. Now, again, the Jews weren't supposed to commit execution, but they were taken to prison. They had their own Jewish guard in the prison, and Saul, I think here, probably was given authority by the Sanhedrin, the ruling council of the Jews, to arrest people. Verse 4, therefore that they that were scattered abroad went everywhere preaching the word. And they went far and wide. We know from Colossians 1:6, I think, that the gospel went to the ends of the earth. Then Philip, one of the deacons, one of the original 7 deacons, like Stephen, went down to the city of Samaria. So Samaria was the capital of the Samaritan region, and preached Christ unto them. Now that's a big deal. As I just said, the Jews and the Samaritans didn't like each other, and Philip's a Jew. Yet he loved God and Christ, and the desire to spread the gospel, the message of salvation by faith alone, was overwhelming to him, and he went to the Samaritans. And the people of one accord gave heed to those things which Philip spoke, so that they accepted his message. Wow. hearing and seeing the miracles which he did. So Philip did miracles, as described in verse 7. For unclean spirits, crying with a loud voice, came out of many that were possessed with him, and many taken with palsies that were lame and were healed. So he cast out demons and he healed the sick. Again, much like Christ did, connecting not just the message, but also the miracles to these half-Jewish people. And again, the Jews, and probably half-Jews, wanted to see miracles, as we know from 1 Corinthians 1. And there was a great joy in that city. All right, so we see now the gospel going forth everywhere, but particularly highlighted here is Samaritan as the gospel steps out from Jerusalem by faithful Philip, and of course the other disciples as well, and probably other Christians. Now, Jerusalem, as I mentioned, apostles stayed in Jerusalem. Now, they didn't all stay there forever. We know from Acts and other traditions that they left, but or most of them left, but there was a core there that stayed by tradition, and Jerusalem was a leading town of the early church, and so important that the towns in the Gentiles regions did try to emulate them and regard them at some level. Now, of course, when Jerusalem was destroyed in AD 70 with the first of the great Jewish revolts, this ended, at least for a time, though Jerusalem certainly remained important, really up until the time of, it remained important functionally up until the time that the Muslims took it over in the 600s. And then after that, as really a figure and a place to be desired as part of what caused the Crusades. Okay, so what have we seen here today? The gospel is going forth with the pressure of persecution into Samaria and the ends of the earth. God is keeping his promise and fulfilling his prophecy from Acts 1. Okay, we'll discuss Philip further next time. I hope you'll join me for that video.